The exercise files for today's course are located in the video description below. Don't forget to like and subscribe.
Welcome to Excel Pivot Tables. You're learning with Mo Jones, IT professional and educator. In this course, we'll learn about the highly sought after tool for data analysis, which is Pivot Table. In this course, we'll explore kind of the first step, just preparing data for pivot table analysis. What do we need to do to our data before we convert it into a pivot table? Also take a look at inserting and managing a pivot table. Now, managing means a lot. It means constructing your pivot table, pivoting the table, querying the table. And we'll go ahead and insert and manage a pivot chart from our pivot table as well. So we'll take it one step further and create a visual. And then we'll take a look at how we can connect different data sources by using the popular XLOOKUP function. So go ahead and open up the practice file for this course and come right back and we'll dive right in.
Looking to support our channel and get a great deal? Become a member today to unlock ad-free videos. That's right, your favorite courses without a single ad. Interested in a specific video? Purchase one of our ad-free courses individually. Looking for even more? Gain access to exams, certificates, and exclusive content at learnitanytime.com. More information can be found in the video description below.
Welcome back. So I did open up my practice file here, and we're taking a look at a data set. So here's just some company payroll. Here we have some headers. We have the employee number, the employee. We have several divisions: California, New Jersey, Georgia, and Washington. We have a few departments as well: sales, development, staff, and research. We have the date of hire for each employee, the amount of hours that they're logging per pay period, their hourly rate, and a formula over here to calculate the gross pay. We also have a status column here indicating whether they're full-time or part-time by using the if function. So if I were to present this data to you and ask you to present this data in about 30 minutes or so to our team, well, naturally, you would first kind of take a look at the data set. It's always a good idea to do that. We can see that we have 94 records here. And we need to anticipate some questions that may be asked. So some of the questions that may be asked is, well, what is the sum of the gross pay? What's the gross pay by department? Maybe gross pay by division. And something like, what is the average hourly rate? Well, as you can see, there's a lot of other questions that we can ask here. And so if we were to try and answer these questions, what are some of the things that we can do? Well, we might use some sorting. We may do some filtering. We may need to use some functions, right? Like the sum function, the average function. We may need to have some basic calculations in here as well that we can use. So there's a lot of different things that we would need to do here. And we would need to go ahead and just kind of move things around and kind of reshape our data here as well. So for the sum of gross pay, we could, enter the sum function and then go ahead and grab all the gross pay. But think about this. This is not something that we want to be doing while we're presenting this data. We want this data to be, readily available with just a simple click of a button. We don't want to have to go through the process of writing formulas. And that's exactly what the pivot table will do for us. The pivot table is going to give us a nice condensed table with all the information that we need. Just a simple table. And it's going to condense this large set of data into a nice compact list with some totals on the bottom and some totals over here on the right as well. Well, let's take a look at a fully functional pivot table and let's see what we can gather from this here. So here's a fully functional pivot table. This is based on our data set. And as you can see, the pivot table is in a condensed form. And if this is your first time looking at a pivot table, this may be overwhelming. So I'll go ahead and annotate some of the things here. We can see that we have some totals down here on the bottom. So this is the total for California, New Jersey, Georgia, and Washington. Over here is the grand total. So this is the sum of all of the gross pay for all of our divisions, all of our departments there as well. So if I were to ask you, well, what's the sum of the gross pay for Washington? We can say the sum of the gross pay for Washington is $18,155.52. Well, what about something else? What if we wanted to grab the gross pay for a department, such as the development department? Well, then we'll take a look at the column over here to the right, and we can see that this is the development sum of gross pay for the development team. So we can see it's kind of three-dimensional here. We're getting a lot of nice information in here as well. So we can already answer some questions. Sum of gross pay by division, gross pay by department as well. Now, if I wanted to answer some deeper questions here, we can see that the total gross pay, the highest gross pay is attributed to the sales department. So now what I can do is I can go ahead and expand the sales department, and now I can get a breakdown of full-time staff inside of the sales team, 15,465.90 as opposed to part-time, 10,962.81. So this is the pivot table, condenses all the information for us. Notice we don't see any formulas in the formula bar. So everything is happening in the background for us. We can see it has a nice layout. It's visually appealing. It's more efficient to work with. And if I wanted to just kind of move things around, I can simply just, if I just want to focus on maybe the gross pay by department, I can do that. Now I can have a nice condensed view just to focus on what I want to use here as well. So think about it. Go ahead and write it down. What do you consider to be a major benefit of working with a pivot table? Take a few minutes, write down your answers, come right back, and we'll actually insert our pivot table. Welcome back. So let's go ahead and get this table, or this data rather, ready for a pivot table. So the question we want to ask is this data ready for a pivot table? So we are working with a list. So we do have our 94 records here. We go down to row 98. And we can see that this is sorted by division. So California, and then Georgia, and then New Jersey, and then Washington here as well. So the first thing to ask is, remember, when we're working with a list, we want to make sure that we have a couple of items here. We want to make sure that we have meaningful and unique headers. We also want to make sure that we have unique labels. So in this case, our labels are the employee ID number, and they're unique to the entire record. And then we have complete records. Now remember, a record, because this is a column-based table, we have our record is a full row of data here as well. So we already have unique and meaningful headers. They describe the data below. So for example, the gross pay, we expect to see gross pays and no dates or text. For the employee, we have the names in here as well. So we're good to go, right? The next thing, we do have unique labels, so we can check off these first two items here as well. The next one, we want to make sure that we have complete records and we have no blanks. Now this is a really big deal because when we create a pivot table, when you have blanks on your data set, they will actually show up as blanks on your pivot table. It will say blank. Plus, it will be incomplete. So for example, what I do is I use the count blank function. This is a good first step. This tells me how many blanks I have in my data set. I have the function right here. It's a simple function. We tell Excel to count the amount of blanks from the range A4 to J98. So if I were working with this data set and I deleted a couple of cells here, it tells me right away that I have 2 blank cells. Right? So right here, we can see it's telling us that. So that's a good first step to make sure. So once I see that, I can simply just go ahead and rectify those blanks. And as I rectify them, it goes away. So we want to make sure that we have 0 blank cells in our data set. The other thing to do is you want to check formatting, especially dates. Now, if we take a look at the date of hire field, we can see that these look like dates to us. But if you take a look at the numbers command group, this tells us that this is not using the date format. This is a custom format. Now, this is a big deal because a lot of our data is it's based on time or dependent on time. Quarterly reports, monthly reports, so forth and so on. If you do not have a properly formatted date field, you will not get the benefits of the date tools that are available in your pivot table. So I'm going to go ahead and fix these dates. I'll go ahead and highlight all of them. And I'll just come back up to the numbers command group here, and I'll use the short date format. And we are good to go. Right? Notice one of the things that we'll kind of discuss this later in the course, but one of the things that we can always ask about our data is how can we improve the data so that we have more reporting features. Notice in column J that I've included a simple if function to determine whether or not the employee is a full-time or part-time employee. So if they're working less than, or in this case, greater than or equal to 40, then they're full-time. Less than or equal to, then they are part-time. So this is a great way to just improve the reporting because now we have a status field that we can go ahead and run data analysis on as well. So those are just some simple cleanup techniques. We want to make sure that this checklist is complete. Now that we have a nice list here, let's go ahead and insert our pivot table. There's several ways to insert a pivot table. We'll explore some of the other options as we go through the course, but for now, let's go ahead and do this the traditional way. We need to click on the Insert tab, and when we're on the Insert tab, we can see that to the far left in the Tables command group, we have Pivot Table. We also have Recommended Pivot Tables. We're going to go ahead and click on Pivot Table here. Now, the first step is just to select the data that you want to add to your pivot table. I don't have to select the entire data set. If I just click anywhere inside, in this case, I'm just clicking on cell C6, Excel is going to automatically select all the data until it gets to a blank column or a blank row. So it's automatically going to select all of this data for us. As a matter of fact, it uses the regional command. So if I press Control A, notice how it selects all of my data until it gets to a blank row or a blank column as well. So I'll go ahead and click anywhere inside of my data set. I'll click back on C6 here, and on the Insert command, I'll click on Pivot Table. When I click on Pivot Table, I'm presented with this dialog box. It's just asking me where is the data that I want to add. I can already see it's already selected all of my data for me. And I do want to place this on a new worksheet. You can place your pivot table on an existing sheet, for example, one of these sheets down here. The only problem is when your pivot table touches other data like text, you get some errors as well. So most of the time we want to go ahead and insert our pivot table on a new worksheet. I'll go ahead and do that. I'll go ahead and press OK. And then we'll take a look at the components of a pivot table. So I just inserted my pivot table here, and I'm just going to reset this here. There we go. So immediately we see two things. On the far left, here is our actual pivot table. It's blank right now. We don't have anything to work with. So that's the first thing. We're getting a little cue here. It says to build a report, choose fields from the pivot table field list. Well, that's over here. So that's the second component. We have our pivot table fields right here. And then finally down here at the bottom, we have 4 areas for filtering our data, for displaying a field in the rows, for displaying a field in the columns, and for displaying an overall value, which is the big ticket item here as well. We also have 2 contextual tabs. So we have one that's called pivot table analyze, and we have one that's called design. So right now I'm on the pivot table analyze, and from here we can do things like insert a pivot chart. We can refresh the table. We can change it to connect it to another data source. We can insert a slicer, a timeline. Right here, we can rename the pivot table as well. We have access to the pivot table options. So this pivot table analyze is going to give us all the tools that we need to manage this pivot table. We also have a design tab, which is right here. And just like with tables and charts, we have styles that are available. And then there's other layouts that we can choose from. And then there's other kind of sub features that we can turn off or on. We'll visit these later on in the course. But for now, let's just go ahead and rename our pivot table. So to do that, I can either click on pivot table analyze, and I can go ahead and type the name right here in that box. Right clicking on the pivot table gives you access to a lot of these commands that are available under the pivot table analyze as well. Let's go ahead and rename the table. I'll click right in here and I'll just call this payroll. Press enter, and there we go. So it is called payroll. Now over here on the far right, there's two things I like to do before I start building my pivot table. Notice that the fields are not in alphabetical order. They appear in the order of the data set. So what I want to do is I want to go ahead and sort them A to Z. So if I click on the gear icon here, there's actually two things I want to do here. I want to go ahead and sort my fields A to Z. I also want to change the view to side by side. Right now it's using stacked. I don't want to do that. So I'll go ahead and sort A to Z first. And there we go. But as you can see, I can't really see all of my fields. I have to scroll through. So I'm going to change the view to side by side. It's going to give me a taller window where I can see all of my fields. And over here, I can see my 4 area boxes as well. So I'll change this to side by side, and then I'll be ready to start building my pivot table. So here's side by side. So this makes it more efficient. If I have a lot of fields, I can see them here, and I still have access to my areas here as well. So it's really up to you. Go ahead and toggle back and forth, either stacked or side by side. I'll stick with side by side. Go ahead and play around with both and then come right back. Welcome back. Now that we have the basics set up here, let's go ahead and start building our pivot table. Now to build our pivot table, it's a matter of taking a particular field and dragging them to one of these actual boxes here. So I like to start with the values box first. And so what's the big ticket item here that we're focused on? Well, it's the gross pay. So I'll go ahead and drag the gross pay right into this box, or I can simply check it off. So either one will allow me to do that. I'll do both. I'll go ahead and drag the gross pay to the values box. And as you can see, let me zoom in just a little bit here. We can see we already have our answer. So the sum of gross pay is 84,306, right? And some decimals there as well. So it automatically runs the calculation for us. It's already summarized that column. To get rid of that, I can either uncheck it or drag it back. This time I'll drag it away. And our pivot table is back to normal. So I'll go ahead and click on the checkbox here. And because it's a numeric value, it automatically places it into the values box as well. So that gives us our answer. Well, we do want to play around with the gross pay here, but let's take a look at something else. What if I click on the employee number? Well, let's see what the pivot table gives us here. So it shows all of the employee numbers and the rows. Doesn't really help me. I'm going to go ahead and drag that to the values. And what it does is it inserts the count function for us. Because this is a alphanumeric character, it's giving us the count of employee numbers. Well, why would we want to do that? Well, remember, the employee numbers are unique. So we have 94 unique employee numbers. Because it's using the count function here, what I can do now is figure out how many employees I have by division. So if I click on division here, look at what it does. So it places the division into the rows for me. And now I get some nice information. So I have 15 employees in California, 27 in Georgia, 30 in New Jersey, and 22 in Washington. Right. What about by department? If I click on department here, it also places the department in the rows. Well, I'll put the department in the columns instead. So look at how many questions we can answer just by having the employee number in the values, department in the columns, and division in the rows. I can answer a very specific question, such as how many employees do we have on our staff team in California? 3, right here. So we can isolate the data. As you can see, the pivot table is taking care of all of that for us. We don't need to enter any formulas or any logical functions like that as well. So I'll go ahead and reset the table. I'll go ahead and clear this out here. Right. I'll go ahead and put the gross pay back in here again. Right. So by default, it gives me the sum of the gross pay. But let's take a look and see how many other ways we can express the gross pay. I'll click on the drop down here. And here I have what's called value field settings. I'll click on here. Here's my value field settings dialog. And now what I can do is I can change it. I can summarize the value by count and also by average. Well, let's try the count and let's see what happens. So don't summarize it, just count it for me. I'll press OK. And look at that, we also get 94 because we have 94 records to work with. So this is another way to kind of give us the number of employees by division, right? So we can always change that value the way that it's being expressed. Let's try one more. I'll go ahead and grab the average here, right? And so the average gross pay is $896.87. What about average gross pay by division? Well, the average gross pay in California, $853. Average gross pay in Georgia, $936. So those are just some of the basics of how we can build a table and how we can change the way that the value is being displayed for us as well. Go ahead and play around with the different values here. Click on the value field settings. Go ahead and use these different summaries here and familiarize yourself with them and come right back. Welcome back. So we can already see how intuitive our pivot table is. Just by simply clicking on a field, we can have the pivot table built for us as we interact with our fields here as well. Well, let's go ahead and answer some of those specific questions that we asked earlier. What is the sum of gross pay by department, also gross pay by division? So I'll go ahead and drag the gross pay back to the values box, and we'll focus on the sum of the gross pay here as well. All right. So right now it's giving us the answer, but I don't really like the way this looks. I don't have the currency or accounting format in here. So let's go ahead and apply the accounting format. I'll click on the drop down here and I'll click on value field settings. We were here before. This time what I want to do is I want to go ahead and click on the number format down here on the bottom left. It's going to give me the format options. Then I simply just want to choose the accounting format. So I'll click on number format here. And here is the accounting. So we can either choose accounting or currency. I like to use accounting because it kind of spaces out the $sign and the number. We can always change it if we want to. So I'll choose accounting and I will press OK. And I can also press OK as well. Notice right here, if we want to change the name that's being displayed right here, we can type in our custom name right here. So instead of saying sum of gross pay, we could say something else here as well. Right? So maybe what I'll say here is, maybe I'll say pay per period. Then I'll go ahead and press OK. So we can see the name has changed, more meaningful for me at least. And now we can read the number more correctly. So as we continue to build the table, all of our cells with numbers will have the accounting format. Okay, so we have the pay per period here. Well, now we're concerned about the division. So let's go ahead and click on the division. Let's put the division into the rows. And there we get a simple condensed list here. We can see the pay per period for each of our divisions here. We can see New Jersey has the highest gross pay. Well, what if I put that into the columns? So I can see it's in the columns here. Looks a little different. So placing it in the columns gives us a different view. I'll go ahead and leave it there. And I'll go ahead and add the department to the rows. So now that I have the division in the columns and the department in the rows, this is a nice view, and we can answer a lot of questions here. So what is our, move over here. So what is our grand total? 84,306.61. Here's our total for Washington, New Jersey, Georgia, California. And then over here, we have our totals for the development department, research, sales, and staff. So look at all these different questions that we can answer here. And all we did so far was we placed the department in the rows, division in the columns, and the gross pay into the values as well. Now I can switch these if I want to. So for example, what if I want the department to be in the columns and the division to be in the rows? I can switch them, and the pivot table will just make the adjustments for me. So I'll go ahead and move the division to the rows, and I'll drag the department to the column here as well. So this is just another view. We still get our totals, but now our subtotals down here on the bottom, there are for our departments, and the totals on the right column for our divisions. So it's just another way to display the data. So it's your pivot table. You're going to go ahead and display the information in any form that you want. Now, one thing that we can do as well is we can put the division and the department in the rows. So if I drag the department here into the rows, now this is pretty cool. Now, because we have two fields in one of these areas, we have a hierarchy. So because division is on the top here, division is going to be a level 1 item, and my department is going to be a level 2 item. And we see that over here as well. We can see that we have our California is the level 1 item, and then we have the level 2 items down here. So development, research, and sales. So it's indented. So it kind of just organizes the data for us. So we did not have to do that. The pivot table took care of that for us. Last thing to mention here, we have different buttons. So you'll notice that we have a button here that allows us to either expand or collapse this list. So if I click here, I can go ahead and collapse all of them. And this gives us a simple view. And now this is on demand. So if someone says, well, why is New Jersey so much? We can expand New Jersey, and we can show the breakdown by department here as well. We can also right click on any of these buttons. And when you right click, you'll notice that we can, towards the middle of that menu, we can either collapse the entire field or we can expand the entire field. I'll go ahead and expand the entire field, and then I'll collapse it. So there we go. And then I'll go ahead and collapse everything as well. And there we go. So just different ways that we can work with our pivot table. Notice when you click away from the pivot table fields goes away. Also, our pivot table analyze and our design goes away. So it is contextual. We have to be interacting with the pivot table to get all three of these components here as well. So go ahead and play around with the pivot table. Just move things around and go ahead and set it up the way that you like it and come right back. Now that we have the basics covered for constructing a pivot table, the next thing that we want to do is we want to go ahead and filter our pivot table. So let's talk about filtering. There's several ways that we can filter a pivot table. We'll notice that we have two filters already built in. We have a row label filter and we also have a column label filter. Now, depending on what we have in the columns, because we have the department in the columns, I should be able to click on that button and filter what is being displayed by department. Now, because I have the division here in the rows for my row label filter, I should be able to filter by division. So let's go ahead and answer a question. Well, maybe I want to just figure out, well, what is the sum of the gross pay for California and Washington? So I'll simply just select California and Washington from the list here, and I'll press OK. Notice how all of the numbers have updated. My grand total represents only the grand totals for California and Washington. So all of these numbers here, so all 15 of these numbers have been updated. So in a fraction of a second, the pivot table wrote these formulas for us and gave us the answer. Now, there's a lot that's happening in the background for the pivot table we're not privy to. The professional that wrote this tool, or the professionals that created this tool, there's a lot that's happening in the background. Now, if you think about it, there's a lot of logical functions that's happening here as well. For example, if the division is California and the department is development, summarize the data from the gross pay column. So a lot of logical functions, sum, if, count, and it will take us a very long time to construct a table like this, but the pivot table is giving us instant analysis for our data as well. Let's go ahead and take a look at the column label filter. So the column label filter, we have our departments because we have our departments in the column here. So if I just want to focus on the research and the sales team, I can simply do that. And I can go ahead and press OK. And now we're able to drill down to find exactly what we're looking for. Research and sales department in California and Washington. And there's our data. So that's one way that we can filter. Now remember, when we're running our filters, it's very important to clear our filters before we move on. Otherwise, this happens a lot. The information will be incorrect. So I can clear the filter right from here. We can see that the filter is active. So once I'm here, I can click on it and I can choose the clear filter option here. So here's clear filter from department. You'll also notice the filter is available or active on your pivot table fields as well. So for my division, I can come over here and I can clear it from here as well. This resets my table. Everything is back to normal. Let's go ahead and take a look at another way that we can filter, and we have the filters box. Well, let's go ahead and filter by status. So I'll grab the status here and I'll drop it in here. I want to be able to filter simply by part-time or full-time staff. So I'll go ahead and drag the status into the filters box. We can see right away that it places that filter box right here on the top left. So there is our filter. There's only two options. If I click on there, it's a simple filter. We don't have all the bells and whistles like the other ones, but I can go ahead and filter either for full-time or part-time staff if I want to. So I'll go ahead and click on there and I'll go ahead and filter for part-time. Let's take a look at that filter. So here we have part-time. So I'll click on part-time here. I can also search up here as well. I'll go ahead and press OK. And now all of our information is being displayed based on our part-timers, which is pretty cool. So we can see up here, it's part-time. And notice how all the numbers have changed. Well, notice that we have some cells here that does not have any data in here. For example, we don't have any part-time staff in Georgia. We also don't have any part-time staff in Washington. That's why we don't see any numbers. These are not necessarily blank data. We just don't have any values there. So it's pretty cool. We can see the pivot table is very, very intuitive. So those are two quick ways that we can filter. We use the row or column label filter. We can also use the built-in filter box here as well. But my favorite way to filter is by using a slicer. Now, we'll click on Pivot Table Analyze. And once we click there, we're going to see over in the filter command group, we have a couple of options here. We're going to be using the slicer. So let's go ahead and insert our slicer, and then we'll go ahead and move on here as well. So we took a look at some built-in filters. Let's go ahead and insert our slicer here. So again, on the Pivot Table Analyze tab, let's go ahead and insert our slicer. Now, the slicer is another way to filter, but we have a little more control and we can filter our data set more efficiently. Notice that we have a slicer for each of our fields. So we have one for status, we have one for the gross pay, hours worked, so forth and so on. Let's go ahead and insert a few slicers here. We can insert all of them if we wanted to, but not all of them are a good candidate. I'll go ahead and insert one for the department, one for the division. I'll also insert one for the status, and let's insert one for the gross pay as well. All right. I'll go ahead and press OK. So here are my 4 slicers. Now I can move them around and I can resize them. So for my department slicer, I'll just make that a little smaller here. Here's my status. I only have 2 buttons on there. So I'll just make this short or shorten that. And then we have one for the gross pay. We can already see the gross pay is going to be problematic because we have so many unique values that it's going to be very difficult to use this. And then we have division. So I'll go ahead and move this over here. And I'll go ahead and shorten that as well. So what exactly do these slicers do? Well, I'm going to go ahead and click on the development button on my department slicer, and we can see what it does. I clicked on the development button on my slicer, and you can see that it is basically filtering my pivot table to only display the information from my development department. Pretty cool. Now, what if I wanted to focus on the development department in California? So as we can see the slicers, by clicking on the buttons, we can control what's being displayed on our pivot table. So we're basically filtering our pivot table, but we're just doing it in a cooler way. We have a little dashboard over here that we're using to control what's being displayed. Well, let's go ahead and clear all of our slicers. So on the top right, you'll notice that we have that clear filter icon on all of our slicers here. So let's go ahead and make sure that those are all cleared. Now we're good to go. A quick tip here. If you want to clear all the filters that are running on your pivot table, just click on your pivot table, and instead of kind of unchecking them individually, if you click on the data tab, you'll notice that this clear filter icon is available. This will basically clear all the filters that are running on your data here as well. So I'll click clear. I notice how it resets my table. I'm back to the total of 84,306.61. Okay, but this is about slicers. So let's go ahead. Now, if I wanted to go ahead and run a slicer for the gross pay, well, there's too many values here. And so this is not really a good candidate. So not all slicers will be a good candidate to use. It will work if I click here. It shows me my one record there for Washington, but doesn't really help me too much. So I'll go ahead and delete this slicer. I'll click on it and then I'll just press the delete key. There we go. So now I have 3 slicers to work with. Now, when it comes to the slicers have their own contextual tab. So if I click on my department slicer here, and I locate the slicer tab, well, I can go ahead and give it a slicer style, which I will do. And I can also change how many columns are being used for my slicer here. So I'll change this to 2 columns. And I'll go ahead and maybe choose this orange style here as well. All right. So I'll change it to 2 columns first. Now I can see I have a 2-column orientation. So now it gives me a little more room. I can make it a little wider. And now I can make it shorter. And now I can move up my division here as well. I'll also give that a quick color, that light orange. For my division, I'll do the same thing. I'll make this 2 columns, make it a little wider as well. Make it the same width. And there we go. And now I can just kind of stack them like this. Now we're good to go. I'll make my division another color and my status another color. So here are my 3 slicers, and I can use these to basically control what's being displayed on my pivot table as well. Now there's another option here on the top right of your slicer. We'll see like a little checklist here. That is the multi-select tool. If you hover over it, it tells you this is the multi-select. You can press the Alt plus S key to toggle that. Well, what this allows me to do is to select more than 1 button at a time. Right now, I can only select 1 button at a time. So if I wanted to select multiple, I can either hold down the Control key and select multiple like that. Or if I just toggle the multi-select tool here, I'll put that on for both of these. Now I can go ahead and select sales and research. And I can go ahead and select California and Washington. So that is the multi-select tool. So you can toggle that on if you want to be able to filter your data here as well. I'll go ahead and clear my filters. I'll turn off the multi-select tool. And I'll just answer a question. What is the sum of gross pay for the part-timers in New Jersey on the development department? And there we go. So very, very specific. So those are our slicers. Always be ready to clear your filters from your slicers. I'll go ahead and remove a few of these. For now, I just want my division and my status. So go ahead and play around with your slicers and come right back. Welcome back. Now that we know how to filter, let's go ahead and take it a step further. Let's go ahead and do a few things. What we want to do, we're going to add data to our original data source. And once we're done, we're going to insert a pivot chart. So let's go ahead and add some data here. Let's go back to our data cleanup worksheet tab. And let's go ahead and add a record on row 99. So if you want to go ahead and add yourself there, that's perfectly fine. So I'll go ahead and put in another employee number here. I'll just go with A40. And I'll go ahead and enter my name here. So this is going to be Jones. And I want to introduce another division and another department because I want to be able to catch the change on the pivot table. So I'll go ahead and put, let's see, I'll put Texas in here. And I'll put tech for that as well. For the hire date, I'll just put, I'll go with January 1st, 2024. Benefits, not really running any analysis on benefits, but I'll put it here. I'm part-time. All right, and there we go. So here's my record in row 99, but specifically, I introduce another division and another department. So I want to go ahead and go back to my pivot table and let's see what happens here. So I'll go back to my sheet 1 and I need to rename this as well. So I'll just rename this as payroll. just like my pivot table. So as we can see, when we come back to our pivot table, we're not seeing the new division and or the new department as well. So let's take a look and see the behavior here. I'll right click on the pivot table and I'll click on pivot table options. Now we'll discuss some of these options a little later, but for right now, if I click on data, notice that we have the option to refresh the data when opening the file, right? So we can do that. So it's not going to just update automatically. We need to do something special here. So to do this, I'll click on pivot table analyze. And if I click on refresh, that doesn't do anything, right? Because right now, this pivot table is based on a specific range. So what I need to do is click on change data source. So if I click on change data source, it brings me back to the original data source. And we can see it's locked onto the range A4 through J98. Well, I just added another row for 99. So I can either highlight the entire data set, or I can just come here and enter a 9 here as well. Now this is pretty cool as well, because maybe I don't want to display all this information. What if I just want to display the data down to row 25? Well, my pivot table will reanalyze and recalculate everything here as well. But in this case, I just want to include that new record that I added here. So I'll go ahead and press OK. And there you go. So we can see that we have our new department and we have our new division here as well. Our number is updated to reflect the total gross pay based on the change. Take a look at my slicer here. We can see that my division slicer has updated to show the new division here as well. Well, let's try one more thing. I'll go back to my data cleanup here. This time what I'll do is I'll go ahead and insert. So I'll just insert a row. I'll insert a record as opposed to adding a new record to the end. So I'll just insert a row here and I'll put in another. So maybe I'll say IT 55. I'll add a friend here. And I'll go for tech as well. Hire date, same thing. And I'll fill out the rest of this information. Okay, so let's go back to our pivot table here. And let's see what happens. So this time, if I right click and refresh, let's see if my number changes from 84906 to something else. And it does. We can see that it has been updated here. Here is the new division for Florida. And here is the new update here as well. So the thing to learn here is that when you're working from a list, which we are, so this is a list, this is not a table, the pivot table is locking onto a specific range. However, if I were to insert a row or a column, the range will expand for me. It's automatically going to expand, right? So I can go ahead and do that. Even take a look at my count blank function here. It is now expanded to 99 as well. So if you insert a record, you simply need to refresh the table. But if you're adding a new record to the end of your data set, you need to click on the Pivot Table Analyze tab and change the data source and just select all the data that you want to add as well. Right? So go ahead and add a new record. And then go ahead and change the data source to include that new row. And when you're done, go ahead and insert a record anywhere in the middle and refresh your table. Just confirm that it works for you and come right back. Now that we were able to add some data, let's go ahead and insert a pivot chart. To insert a pivot chart, we can simply click on our pivot table, click on the Pivot Table Analyze tab, and then to the far right, under Tools, we'll see our pivot chart. Now, the great thing about the pivot chart is it's directly tied to our pivot table. So we simply need to choose the type of chart that we want to be displayed. And we'll take a look and see as we change the data that's being displayed on our pivot table, our chart will dynamically recreate itself. So I'll insert my pivot chart here. Now, here is our insert chart dialog. So I have different charts that I can use, line charts, pie, bar, area, so forth and so on. Some will not be available. I'll keep it simple. I'll just stick to the clustered column one here. And let's see, maybe I'll go for a little 3D clustered column. We'll go for this one. I'll go ahead and press OK. I'll close the pivot chart fields for now so I can see my chart here. So here is my pivot chart. So we can see it's displaying whatever is currently on our pivot table. We get some really nice filters here. So what if I want to filter by, let me move my slicers down here. I want to show you what happens when we filter either using the chart or the pivot table or the slicers here. So we have three filters for our chart. We have status, full-time, part-time, we have our departments, and we have our division. Well, I want to remove Texas and Florida from the division. So I'll just go ahead and remove Texas and Florida. I'll press OK. Right. So there we go. So we can see that now because we filtered our chart, take a look at our pivot table. Our pivot table has also been filtered. Take a look at our slicer. So our slicer has also been filtered. So the one thing to note is that these are all connected. So our pivot table is connected to our chart, is connected to our slicers. So they're all connected to each other. So running a filter on one will filter the others as well. If I click on the full-time button here on my slicer, we can see that the information on my chart has also changed, as well as on my pivot table. Right? So we're good to go. Now, when it comes to our pivot chart, we can move it, and we'll move it in just a little bit, but let's take a look at just some basic customizations that we can make. Up here on the top right, we have the chart elements, so we can turn some things off or on. So we can add a chart title if we want to. We can display the data labels at the top. We have the data table. So, but what I like to do when it comes to a pivot chart is keep it simple, just to choose one of the chart styles that are available. So here are the different styles that we can use. Here's style 2. If we scroll through, here is style 3. This style has the data labels at the top of the chart. Now we have different types here as well. Here's style number 9, nice dark theme. And then we have 10, and then we also have 11. I'll go with 11 here as well, and we're good to go. So now what I can do is I can go ahead and move this chart. But before I do that, let's go ahead and just kind of reconstruct our table here. And let's see what happens to our chart. Well, first I'll clear all of my filters here. And let's reconstruct this. So what if I don't want to show my, let's say, go back to my pivot table. What if I remove the department from the columns? So now as you can see, I'm only showing the pay per period for my divisions. And we can see the chart is reflecting that currently here as well. If I were to change this to department, remove this here. And there we go. So now here's the sum of gross pay by department. So as I move things around here, I'll get some different answers as well. For the pay period, what if I want the hours worked per department and per division? Well, there we go. So we can see we don't need to do anything special to the chart. It's dynamically linked to our pivot table. I'm going to move my chart here. So if you click on Pivot Chart Analyze, we have a lot of things that we can use here. Here's the Move Chart command on the Pivot Chart Analyze tab. Let's go ahead and move our chart We can also right click and use the move chart command here. But let's move the chart to a new sheet. And then we'll press OK. So here's the chart on that new sheet all by itself. Now this is still linked to my pivot table, right? So right now I'll remove that department. I don't want to show the tech. I'll press OK. So that looks a lot better, right? So I am filtering to remove the tech department. I'll go back to payroll here. And you can see that we're still linked to our pivot table. It's only showing development, research, sales, and staff, but not tech. So even though we move our pivot chart, it's still connected to our data set, which is good because typically you want your pivot chart to be on another sheet. You don't want it to be on the same sheet as your pivot table. Well, that's it. So go ahead and play around with go ahead and move your pivot chart. Go ahead and turn some of these features on or off. Go ahead and choose a style and come right back. Welcome back. So we've covered all the basics with regards to a pivot table. So you now have all the tools, the essentials that you need to build a pivot table. Well, let's take a look at the XLOOKUP function. For our project for module 1 here, or part 1, what we want to do is on the joining datasets worksheet here, we have 3 different datasets. We have a products list, we have a region list, so sales rep and region, and then we also have an order form over here as well. But we can see that the order form is missing some information, such as what is the region where the transaction took place, what is the price of the actual product. So rather than doing this manually, we want to write an XLOOKUP statement that will automatically populate the region based on the sales rep. Right? So for example, Dan Peterson is in the Midwest division. So you want to be able to ask Excel to put Midwest right in here for us. The Sunshine product over here is 1995. We want to be able to put that price over here manually. And Excel will fill out all the prices based on the product here as well. So in order to do that, we're going to use XLOOKUP. But before we do that, we need to understand how XLOOKUP works. So here's a small product list over here. We have the product ID, the product name, the quantity, the amount that's in stock, and then we have the actual price of the product. We want to create a little kiosk here so that if we put in a product ID number, let's say 1050, what it's going to do, it's going to go ahead and take this ID and it's going to go ahead and go down this column, the product ID column. Once it finds a match, that 1050, it's going to head on over to the right, find the product name, and place that over here for us. It's also going to find the price from the price column and drop in the price over here as well. So basically, we'll be able to enter a product ID and have Excel automatically populate column H and I with the corresponding product name and the corresponding product price. So let's go ahead and do this together. So I'll click on cell H5 and I will insert my XLOOKUP. We'll use the function arguments box for this. So I'll click on the formulas tab here. And on the formulas tab, we're going to click on where it says insert function. We'll get the dialog box and we will search for the XLOOKUP function. So we'll click here. I'll type XLOOKUP. I'll press go. Here's XLOOKUP. I'll go ahead and press OK. So here's my function arguments box for XLOOKUP. And it tells me the name of the function, tells me what it does. So it searches a range for a match and returns the corresponding items from a second range or array. Well, that's exactly what we want to do. We have arguments here. The lookup value is the value to search for. The lookup array is the array or range to search. The return array is the array or range to return. I already have this kind of annotated for us here as well. So basically, in my words, the lookup value is the unique ID. So the unique ID is basically whatever value we enter in this cell. That is the lookup value. The unique ID column, so the lookup array is going to be the unique ID column. So this is where basically column A, where we can find our IDs. The return array is going to be the product name column. And then we're good to go. These other ones down here, if not found, these are optional. We don't even need to enter anything here as well. So let's go ahead and plug this in. So my lookup value, I'll point to cell G5. So whatever value is in G5, that is the lookup. Notice it's already recognized that the value 1050 is in G5. So the next part, the lookup array, is where can we find those product IDs? Well, right here, column A. I'm going to highlight all of those from A5 down to A21. Now, because this is a table, it's giving us the table name and the table column. So table 1, product ID column. Here's the preview of the array. Here are the ID numbers, 1050, 1051, 1052. So this lets us know we're locked onto the correct array. 2 down, 1 to go. Which column do we want to return? Well, we want to return the product name. So I'll highlight this. And that's it. We're good to go. The function in the background is doing a lot of things that we're not privy to. We simply need to point to the lookup value, which again is G5. We need to point to the lookup array, which is basically all of our product IDs. And then we need to specify the return array, which in this case is the product name. And so we are good to go. Change the color here. Right. So pause the screen, take a look. If this is your first time using XLOOKUP, it does take a little pausing to kind of think logically what we're trying to accomplish here. But again, the function does the work for us. We can see it's already giving us our answer. It is the Aspen, which is correct. So I'll go ahead and press OK. And there we go. There is our Aspen product. If I change the product ID to 1054 and press enter, it gives me the doublers, which is correct. Well, let's go ahead and write our XLOOKUP statement for the price, and then we'll move on to our final project for part 1 here. So I'll go ahead and insert my function. Here's XLOOKUP. Lookup value, same thing. It's going to be G5. The lookup array, the product ID column from table 1. The return array, the only thing that's different, I want to return the price. So I'll highlight my prices here. It's already giving us our answer, $41.13 for our doublers with ID 1054. I'll go ahead and press OK. And there we go. So that is the XLOOKUP function. Not as intimidating as it looks. It does the work for us. We simply need to identify the lookup value, the lookup array, and the return array. I'll go ahead and test it here. I'll put 1066. Now we can see this is correct. It gives me the correct record here on row 21. Very good. Go ahead and write your XLOOKUP statements. Go ahead and enter a few product IDs just to make sure you're getting the correct answer, and come right back. Welcome back. Now for our final project, what we want to do is we want to go ahead and make sure that this order form has all the information that we need to create a pivot table to answer questions such as the sales by region, sales by product, sales by sales rep, and maybe even some sales by month or quarter or year as well. So we have, this is very common in the data world to have your data sets in different places. So we have a product table here. We have a region table here as well. And then we have our order form. So this is what we want to focus on. We want to make sure that we add the region based on the sales rep. This will allow us to run regional reports. We need the price of the actual product. So we'll grab the price based on the product, and then we'll enter a simple calculation in column M for the sale. We'll just multiply the units times the price, and then this will be good to go. Now this is a really big data set. If I press Control End, this goes down to row 10,003. So this order form has 10,000 rows or 10,000 records. I'll press Control Home to go back to cell A1. Let's go ahead and plug this in. So for the region, we're going to enter XLOOKUP. Now remember, we already have the information that we need. We have our lookup value, we have our lookup array, and we have the return array. So I'll highlight this first here. So for our region, this is our target. We want to return the region here. To return the correct region, we're going to use the sales rep. So in this case, Isabel Cross. We're going to search the sales rep column for Isabel Cross. So that's the lookup array. And then once we're done, what do we want to return? We want to return the region from the region column. So we already have all that we need. I'll make this a different color. So here is our lookup value, Isabel Cross. Here is our lookup array. And here is our return array. So we just need to point to those different areas. So let's go ahead and do that here. Now I have converted these to tables for you. If you've never created a table before, we'll go through the process of inserting a table, but part 2 or module 2. So right now, one of the benefits of working with a table is once I enter a formula or a function in the top row, it's automatically going to fill down that formula for me. So let's write our XLOOKUP. I'll insert XLOOKUP here. Now remember, lookup value, we're going to take the sales rep. Where can we find the sales reps? Over here. I'll just highlight them manually. So 2 down, 1 to go. The next is, what do we want to return? We want to return the corresponding region from the table here. So I'll go ahead and highlight all of those as well. And once I'm finished, I can see that because I'm working with a table, Excel gives the table name. So region table, sales rep column, region table, region column. Here's a preview, Alan Ramos, Andrew Meyer, Midwest, West, East. It's already telling us that Isabel Cross is from the East region. So as long as you have East there, you should be good to go. Go ahead and press OK. It should automatically fill out all of the corresponding regions for us. So let's go ahead and press OK. And there we go. Well, maybe we're skeptical. Let's check Cecilia Manning. Is Cecilia Manning from the South? Well, let's take a look and see. Where's Cecilia Manning? Here's Cecilia Manning. Indeed, Cecilia is from the South. So we're good to go. Pretty cool. Now let's go ahead and grab the price from our product. Again, we already have the data we need. So let's enter our XLOOKUP function. Lookup value is going to be the product. Where can we find the products? Right over here. A4 to A15, aka products table, products column. What do we want to return? Well, we want to grab the price. So product table, price column. And that's it. 1995 for our sunshine, and that is correct. I'll go ahead and press OK. There we go. Everything is all correct here as well. So now we have the region, we have the price. We simply need to enter a formula to calculate the sale. So in this case, I'm just going to say equal, and it's going to be K, looks like this is K4. So K4 times the value that is in M4. So that's what my formula is going to look like. Because it's a table, it's not going to say K4 and M4, but we do have the target cells that we want. K4 is here and L4. Okay, so I'll click on cell M4 here and I'll say equal, and I'll click on the units here from cell K4, and I'll multiply it with the asterisk times the price. All right. So units times the price, I'll go ahead and press enter, and there you go. So just like that, we have a fully functional order form now, captured all the data that we need to create a pivot table. So I'm just going to go ahead and insert a quick pivot table. I'll click on the insert tab, and maybe this time I'll use a recommended pivot table. And this one says sum of sales by region. I'll go ahead and grab that one. I'll press OK. Here's my pivot table showing my sales by region as well. Again, we'll just give this the accounting format. And we're good to go. So now we have sum of sale by region. If we want to add the products in there, we can go ahead and do that. Well, maybe not. That's overkill. Maybe I'll put the region into the columns. And there we go. So that is how that works. Go ahead and complete those tasks and come back, and we'll wrap up. That completes module 1. Now we've learned all the essentials that we need to build and manage a pivot table. Module 2 will build on our learning. In this module, what we'll cover is we'll summarize a table with the pivot table. So we'll convert a data list into a table, and we will take a look at the tools available to convert that into a pivot table as well. We'll take a look at some advanced pivot table tools. We'll also be able to customize our pivot table by choosing the design, colors, a lot of the cosmetic aspects of the pivot table. You can even brand your pivot table if you so desire. We also are going to take a look at Power Pivot. So Power Pivot is a part of the Microsoft's Power Platform, and this will allow us to connect multiple data sources and really work with big data. So that's what we'll be covering. Once we upload our data into Power Pivot, we'll be able to create what's called measures and or calculated columns, and we'll be able to create a cohesive pivot table from the data model. So go ahead and open up the Module 2 practice file and come right back and we'll dive right in. Here is our practice file for our second portion here. And we have a couple of worksheet tabs here on the bottom. Well, we have advanced tools, which we'll be exploring. We'll also take a look at pivot table design, and then we'll go ahead and introduce Power Pivot. And then we also have some kind of a bonus. We'll take a look at how to perform some data mining to improve our reporting capabilities. On our very first worksheet tab here, what we want to do, we have a list here. So just our Peer Creamery sales, we have the order ID, the sale date, we have the product, salesperson, region. We're tracking the sales and the units as well. So right now we have 3 sales representatives. We have Pullen, Watson, and Bishop. And we're selling in 3 different regions. So Central, North, and West as well. Several products, popsicles, ice cream, tasty treats, frozen yogurt. So we want to keep it simple. That's why we're using creamery items here. So let's go ahead and convert this list to a table and then insert a pivot table. So remember, we can convert this list into a table by pressing Control+T on our keyboard. So that will convert our list into a table. So I'll go ahead and do that. You don't have to highlight the entire list. Let's scroll down. Let's see how big this list is. I'll press Control End. This goes down to row 112. So not that bad. I'll press Control Home to go back to cell A1. And here we go. So if I just press Control T, here's my Create Table dialog box. And we can see it's already selected all of the data for me, A4 to G112. And that's because I don't have any blank rows or columns in here. My table does have headers, so I'll go ahead and press OK. So here is my table. Now I know that this is a table because a lot of things have happened here. If you take a look at the ribbon, we have what's called table design. And the whole reason we're converting this into a table is because when you convert your list into a table, you have more opportunities to manage your data. For example, we have table styles. We have filters that have been turned on. We can also add the total row. We can go ahead and insert a slicer as well. We can remove duplicates. And then another big thing that we can do is we can go ahead and summarize this table with a pivot table. So just a quick rundown on what a table is. Let's go ahead and click on the table design. And let's go ahead and click on the option that says Summarize with a pivot table. I'll go ahead and click here. And just like before, when we're inserting a table, we have the capability to insert a pivot table here. Well, I do want to add this to a new worksheet, so I'll go ahead and press OK. And there you go. So we have our pivot table. All of our fields are here for us, and we're good to go. So we can go ahead and start building this table. Now remember, we want to take a look at some advanced tools such as calculated fields, using the timeline, drill down reports, and report pages. So I'm just going to copy this data over here, and I'll put it far to the right, maybe over here. And these are the different tools that we'll be exploring here. Let's go ahead and some of the basics, just to kind of recap. I'll click on pivot table options. I want to rename my table, and I'll just call this one Creamery Sales. While I'm here, I'll click on the display tab and I'll go ahead and sort my field list A to Z. Make sure they're sorted in alphabetical order. So I'll go ahead and do that as well. And I'll go ahead and press OK. Remember, you can also change the view from stacked versus side by side. I'll leave it on side by side here. Well, I'll go ahead and build out a pivot table. So I'll go ahead and grab the sales. I'll go ahead and apply the accounting format as we've learned before. Number format, accounting, OK, and then OK. So here are some of sales. I'm going to zoom in just a little bit here. And now what about sales by product? I'll put the product in the rows and I'll put the region in the columns. And just like that, we have a really nice table that we can interact with. Well, what if I add some data to the original data source? I'm going to go back to my original data source here, but let me rename this worksheet first. So I'll call this Creamery Sales. And let's go back to the advanced tools. Now, what I'm going to do is at the very end, I'll press Control End here, and I'm going to add another transaction. So I'll say 1109, and I'll go with the same date. Why not? And what I want to do is introduce another product. So I'll introduce another product. Let's say I'll go for organic yogurt. I'll add my name in here. And I'll introduce another region as well. So I'll go for the East. And for the units, I'll go with 25,000. We already have the formula in column F. So here is my new record on row 113. Now what I want to do is go back to the pivot table. We can clearly see that region has not been added and we don't have our new item here. Well, here's the benefit of working with a table. I don't have to click on Pivot Table Analyze and click on Change Data Source and then select all my data again. Well, all I need to do is simply right-click on my pivot table, and we'll notice the refresh icon right here. So I'll click on Refresh, and just like that, my pivot table updates. Now this only works because I'm working from a table. So here's my new region. And here is my new product as well. So this works because the nature of the table automatically expands when you add data to it. It continues the formatting from above. We get some nice filters in here as well. And we can see our headers as we're scrolling through our document. No need to freeze that particular row. Go ahead and convert your list into a table. Go ahead and insert a pivot table, add another record to the original data set, and refresh your pivot table, and come right back. Welcome back. Let's go ahead and take a look at one of the advanced tools, which is a calculated field. So what I want to do, I'm just going to go ahead and reset my table here. And all I want to focus on are my sales reps. So I'll add my sales reps to the rows and the sum of sale and the values as well. So maybe we want to go ahead and calculate the commission based on the sales here. So let's say we're giving out commission and the commission is at 25%. Not bad. So what can I do to be able to calculate the commission? Well, I don't have a field over here that's called commission. If I go back to my original data set, I don't have a field called commission. So I have two options. I can either come back here to my original data set, add a field called commission, go ahead and insert my calculation, fill down my formula, and then go back to my pivot table and then refresh the data. Well, those are a lot of steps, and a lot of times you don't want to really modify the original data. One of the benefits of working with a pivot table is the changes that you make on the pivot table, they do not impact the original data. The original data stays intact. And so we want to avoid having to come here and add another field. So to remediate that, what we're going to do is create what's called a calculated field. I'm going to click on Pivot Table Analyze. And on Pivot Table Analyze, over in the Calculations command group, if I click on the drop down, I'll see that we have what's called a calculated field. Now, once I click on the calculated field, I'll be presented with a dialog box. I simply need to enter the name and then the formula. And once I create that field, I can add it over here as a field that I can use pretty much anywhere in my pivot table. It's also going to be displayed right here, and all of my values are going to be displayed here as well. So let's take a look at how that works. I'll click on Pivot Table Analyze. Here is Fields, Items, and Sets. I'll click on Calculated Field, and as expected, we're presented with this dialog box. I need to go ahead and add a field name. Well, I want to call this field commission, because that's exactly what I'll be calculating here. Now the formula, we can only enter simple formulas in here. We cannot refer to a cell reference like F1 in this case. If you click on the question mark here, this little help button, this will open up a Microsoft page for you, indicating the types of formulas and functions that can be used here. But I just want to keep it simple. So what I'm going to do is my formula is going to equal the sum of sales times the commission at 25%. So what I can do is I'll grab the sales here. I'm going to insert that field into the formula. And I'll enter my asterisk. So equals sales times, and I'll enter 25% just like that. So the name of the field is going to be commission. The formula is equal to the sales times 25%. What I'll do is I'll click on add, and I'll see that this will be added to my field list here. And then I'll go ahead and press OK. And then we'll see it populated over here as well, quickly giving us the commission for each of our sales reps. So I'll click on add. And here is my commission field now. Then I'll go ahead and click on OK. And there you go. So we get those two things. We have the commission field that we can use over and over. And here we have answered our question. We can see that because Watson had the highest sales, Watson is getting the highest commission at 100,412 as well. So that's the benefit of working with a calculated field. Well, now what's really nice is, well, what if I want to calculate the commission not just by sales rep? What about the commission that would paid out based on a particular product? Well, look what I can do. I'm going to go ahead and move things around here. So I'll go ahead and click on the product, and I'll go ahead and remove the sales rep. And look at that detail that we're given. So when you create a calculated field, we can use it in multiple instances in our pivot table as well. Finally, I'll do one for the product. Let's see what we have dished out based on our region. So I'll click on region. I'm going to remove my product. And here we go. So now we can see the commissions that were paid out. 75,000 in commission was paid out in the central region. So go ahead and insert a calculated field. Go ahead and add it to your pivot table fields, and go ahead and use it and get the commission by product, sales rep, and by region, and come right back. In this mini lesson, we'll learn about the timeline. I'll go ahead and quickly construct my table here. I just want the region and the columns, and I want the product in the rows. So here's my simple table. I can see all of my products and all of my regions. Here's my grand total. Well, a lot of the information that we analyze, it is based on time. And a lot of time we want something like a quarterly report or a yearly report or even a monthly report. So we do have a properly formatted date field in here, which is the sale date. So I can go ahead and drag the sale date to one of these boxes, or I can just click on it. But it's going to just kind of place dates in random places here. So what I prefer to do is to use the actual timeline. To use a timeline, we'll click on Pivot Table Analyze. And right next to our good friend, the slicer, we can see that we have the timeline. Now, this is why it's very important to make sure that you have a properly formatted date field. If we do not have a properly formatted date field, we will not be able to insert a timeline. Well, let's get some reports here. I'll click on Insert Timeline. And as you can see, it found that we have a matching date field here for the sale date. I'll go ahead and click on Sale Date. I'll go ahead and click on OK. And here is my timeline. So just like the slicer, it comes with its own contextual tab, so we can change the color. I'll go ahead and just give it a little contrast here. I'll give it this orange color. There we go. So here is my timeline. The way that the timeline works, it's basically a filter, just like a slicer, but we're working with a date hierarchy. So the first thing to note on the top right of our timeline, we'll notice right here, if we click on this drop down, we can either look at our data from a year level, quarterly level, months, or even days as well. Well, I'll click on years. And it looks like we had transactions in 2022 and in 2023. So if I were to ask, well, what were our sales for 2022? If I click here in 2022, I can see that we had sales of 519,378. Notice how all of these numbers have changed because we're filtering just for 2022. So when I click on 2023, all of these numbers should update as well. I'll click on 2023, and we can see that we have a different set of numbers here for 2023. So that's looking at it at a year level. Let's go ahead and take a look at it at a quarterly level. So because we have 2 years, we have 8 quarters that are available. So now we can be very specific. What were our Q1 sales in 2023? That is pretty cool. So no need to write formulas. The pivot table is taking care of all of that for us. Here are our Q1 numbers for 2023. Now I can also expand this timeline. So what about the first half of 2023? Notice when I move my cursor towards the end of this little time capsule, I can drag it to the right. So now I'm looking at Q1 to Q2 of 2023. Here is my grand total. So pretty nice as well. What about Q4 for 2022? There we go. Now let's change this to months. So I'll click on months here. And we have a lot of months to work with, so we need to kind of expand our timeline here. And let's say I just want to focus on 2022. Well, what about January of 2022? Look at that. In January of 2022, we had sales of 68,244. February went down. March went down. April. Yeah, we're kind of going down here. June picked back up. It's the summertime. Everybody wants tasty treats here. And so we can see how that works. It even goes down to the days as well. So this is very granular. So we can go down to a specific date, June 23rd of 2022. Look at that. So pretty cool. I'll go ahead and clear the filter from my timeline. And so that is the timeline. A really nice tool to help you to have more control over time-based data analysis. Sometimes when you're taking a look at your data, you may want to just kind of get more detail in terms of these numbers. For example, we can see that in terms of products, we can see that ice cream had the highest sales, $445,780.50 here as well. Well, what if we wanted to, kind of use ice cream, the ice cream sales, as kind of the standard? So in other words, how can we improve our sales for frozen yogurt, popsicles, and tasty treats, and so forth and so on? Well, what we can do is we can create a separate report for ice cream, and all of the transactions that refer to ice cream will be included in that report. Well, we don't have to do anything special. We don't have to build it. I'm just going to go ahead and double click on this number. And when I double click on this number, let's see what happens. Well, it's going to create a worksheet for us with all of our details concerning ice cream. So I'll go ahead and double click on this number. And as you can see, it has all the transactions here. So these are all of my transactions regarding ice cream. Here's the dates in here so we can see. So this is a pretty nice tool because we have all the detail. So now we can break away from the pivot table and we can focus on, maybe this will be the data for discussion for this portion as well. So we have everything in here. So now we can answer the question, how did we arrive at this 445.7K? Here's the breakdown, and the pivot table gave this to us. We did not have to build this manually. Now, if we wanted to go ahead and run some filters on here, we can filter by date because it inserted this data in table form, and so we're good to go. So maybe we can go ahead and do some sorting and so forth and so on. So that is just being able to kind of drill down or drill through our actual report. So a nice little tool that allows us to do that. We can double click on any of these numbers and we'll get that particular detail here as well. For frozen yogurt in the central, I'll double click here. And as you can see, only frozen yogurt in the central region. So pretty nice. Okay, let's go back here to our creamery sales. The next thing we'll talk about is what's called report page filters. So basically what I want to do is I want to go ahead and kind of create another pivot table based on this table. And specifically what I would like is I would like to have different pivot tables. One pivot table on a sheet that's for the central region, another pivot table on another sheet for the north, and of course one for the east and the west as well. Right? So they'll behave independently, and this gives me the capability. This way I don't have to try and copy and paste the pivot table somewhere else. I can just create individual report filter pages for these here as well. So how does that work? Well, the first thing we need to do is we need to go ahead and introduce a field into the filters. So the first question is, well, what do we want to create the reports based on? Well, we want reports based on the region. So I want regional reports. I'll go ahead and drag the region into the filters box here. And now that I've dragged the region into the filters box, let's go ahead and click on the pivot table analyze tab. And let's go ahead and find out where we can insert these reports. All the way to the far left, we have the pivot table command group. If I click on the drop down, I can see that I have show report filter pages are available here. Right. So step one, we need to go ahead and introduce a field into the filter box. Step two, we need to go ahead and click on the pivot table analyze tab. And step three, we need to go ahead and actually show the report filter page. So I'll go ahead and do that. I'll click on the drop down here. I'll click on show report filter pages. And look what it's looking for. It's looking to see what field we have in the filters area. If we did not have a field in here, we would not be able to show a report filter page. So that's why the first step is adding one of these fields into that filter. I'll go ahead and press OK, and let's see what happens. We should get 4 new worksheets, each one for east, west, north, and south. Let's go ahead and press OK. And here we go. So here's the north. Well, we'll start with central. So here's the report page for central, north, west, and east as well. So these are behaving autonomously. So if I make any changes here, it does not affect the original pivot table. So I can go ahead and just focus on the central here. And I can go ahead and add my timeline if I want to, analyze the data here just for the central. If I head on over to the west, I can do the same thing. I can kind of just move these around here. So maybe I just want to go ahead and let's see, maybe I'll put the salesperson here in the columns. So we can go ahead and reconstruct these individual tables in any manner that we want. So those are the report filter pages. We have one for each of the region. Just be careful when you're creating these report pages. This works well because I only had 4 regions. If I had 20 regions, we would have 20 worksheet tabs to work with. So just remember, not every field is a good candidate for a slicer. In the same way, not every field is a good candidate for a report filter page. Now, when you're working with your pivot table, you do have the capability to customize the design. And in this lesson, what we'll do, we'll take a look at how we can change the report layout. We'll customize how the subtotals and the grand totals are displayed. And we'll go ahead and just a quick demo on how we can create our own pivot table design. If I click on my pivot table here, these can all be found on the Design tab. So I'll click on my pivot table. Here's the pivot table design. We can always choose a quick pivot table style. Let's see what styles are available. So we have light styles. We can also hover over each one. We can see how it's impacting our pivot table. We have medium styles, where we can see that we have some more contrasting colors in here, especially for the headers and those subtotal rows. If you scroll down, we also have dark tables. Right? So it really depends on what you are looking for. Now, if we take a look right now, what if none of these tables are working for us? We want to go ahead and create our own pivot table. Well, once we do that, we'll see another section up here at the top, and this will display any custom pivot tables designs that we have created. We can also make that the default as well. But for now, let's go ahead and take a look at the different layouts. So by default, we're using the compact form. I'll go ahead and add some more detail in here. So I'll show my field list, and I want at least 2 fields in one of these rows. So maybe I'll go for, let's see, I'll put the product in the rows. There we go. Okay, so here we can see this is the compact form. I'll go ahead and change the report layout to outline form, and then we'll take a look at tabular form. And just go ahead and choose whichever one works best for you. So here's compact. We're just compacting as much data as we can. Here's the outline form. And we can see the outline form kind of just gives us a little more space to work with. If we take a look, we can catch the change. Basically what it did is it pushed our products over into its own column. It's no longer sharing the same column as our salesperson here. So if I go back to compact, we can see it's going to push it over to column B. And there we go. So this looks pretty good. Let's take a look at tabular form. So tabular form looks really, really nice. And if you're showing this for the first time, you may want to use tabular form. It looks a little more simple to kind of understand what's going on here as well. So those are the 3 different layouts that we can choose. So again, here's compact. Here is outline. And then here is the tabular form, which mostly represents an Excel table as well. Now, we have some other options down here on the bottom, such as repeat all item labels. So basically what this does, this fills out the blank space here. And this is helpful if you have a really large, a lot of data being displayed here. And you may want to just add that little detail here so everyone can kind of read the data from left to right. But I can say do not repeat all item labels. We're good to go. Now, when you're displaying your pivot table, there's a lot of numbers here, a lot of grand totals. We have a lot of subtotals in here as well. And this could be a little overwhelming for your audience. So you can determine which one of these you want to turn off, and what you want to leave on. So we can turn off these subtotals, these grand totals. Let's just quickly take a look at some of the options that are available. So for subtotals, if I say do not show subtotals, let's see what happens. So we can see we don't have that subtotal row down here at the bottom for each of our sales rep. So we only have the grand total column on the right and the grand total row on the bottom here as well. If I go back to subtotals, I can say show all subtotals at the bottom of the group. So it shows down here. Here's Bishop. Bishop gets a subtotal. Or I can say show it at the top of the group. Now, depending on the layout that you're using, this will not matter. If I change this to compact, we can see it showing at the top here. I'll go back to tabular form. And so that's it. So I'll go ahead and show the subtotals at the bottom of the group. Then we have grand totals. So the same thing, we can turn off our grand totals. And so we can see we no longer have our grand total column. We no longer have our grand total row. So this just gives you a little more flexibility in terms of what you want to display. Maybe you just want to focus on the subtotals for now and not so much the grand totals. So we do have those options here as well. The other option is grand totals on for rows and columns, which is the default. If I only want it to be on for rows, then here is the grand totals summarizing our rows over here as well. And as expected, we also have one on for columns only, which shows the grand total at the bottom, summarizing our central, north, and west regions here as well. So those are just some of the different ways that we can kind of improve the experience for our audience. Go ahead and toggle some of these options. See if you can catch the change. Now let's come right back and we'll actually go ahead and create our own pivot table style. Let's go ahead and create our own pivot table design. So I'll go ahead and click on the design tab here, and I can go ahead and change it. Maybe I'll go ahead and change it to a medium style table. So I'll go for this one here. So light blue pivot style medium 6. So I can go ahead and choose one from here if I want to, or maybe I'm scrolling and I'm just not finding the one that I like here. So what I can actually do is I can go ahead and create a new pivot table style. Maybe you want to go ahead and brand your pivot table to your company colors or so forth and so on. Keep in mind that when we're building the table, the colors that are available is based on the current theme that we have selected. So for example, if I click on the page layout tab here and I head on over to the left, I can either choose an existing theme, the same themes that are available in PowerPoint and Word, or I can go ahead and choose my own colors. I can go ahead and choose my own fonts here as well. We'll keep it simple. I'm just going to go ahead and take a look at some of the themes that are available here. So by default, we're all using the Office theme, unless you change it to Facet or Gallery. And we can see that our entire Excel document is being updated. The colors, the fonts, and the effects are immediately being updated or changed. We have access to different fonts and different colors here as well. So here are just some different ones. So here's Droplet. So if you want access to different colors to work with, go ahead and change the theme, or you can select your own color palette. You can also go ahead and select your own fonts as well. Well, I'll keep it simple. I'll go with the basic Office theme here. I'll click on the Design tab. I'll click on this drop down and I'll go ahead and create a new pivot table style. Now we'll just cover the basics here. This will take a very long time to actually go through this. So I'll go ahead and call this one pivot table style. I'll call this pivot table custom 1. So the way that this works is you give it a name, and then over here on the right, we have a preview in terms of what the table will look like. So we can see once we add the formatting to the header row, the first column, the total row, so forth and so on. When you're formatting the table, you need to choose what part of the table you want to format. So there's a lot of parts here. The whole table, report filter labels, first column stripe, header row, first column. So we can interact with all of these different elements here. Subtotal rows, column subheadings, grand total column. So I'll go ahead and format the whole table, the first column, the header row, and then maybe the grand total row. Right. So let's see. So I'll start off with the whole table. I'll click on the Format tab here. Notice before you start this, or before you finish, you can also click down here on the bottom to lock this in so that every time you create a pivot table, this will be the default pivot table style. I'll go ahead and click on Format for the whole table. And just like when you're creating a table design, we have this simple dialog box where you can choose the how you want this to interact here as well. So I'll go ahead and click on the fill color, right? So the fill color for my entire table, let's say I'll go with a light gray, and I'll go ahead and press OK. And I can see here it's already has that gray color. I'll click back on the Format tab. I'll go to the font. And for the color, maybe I'll go with a dark blue. I'll go ahead and press, well, maybe I want the borders as well. I'll go ahead and add a border. I'll say I want an outline border, and I'll choose a solid line, and I want the color to also be that dark blue. So I'll go ahead and press OK. And there we go. So I'll go ahead and format the header row. Now I'll just do the opposite here. For the header row, the font is going to be gray this time. I do want it to be bold. I want it to stand out. And for the fill color, it's going to be that dark blue. So I'll go ahead and press OK. As you can see up here, here's the header row. It has the gray text on a dark blue background. My first column, we'll go to my first column here. I'll also go ahead and format that. And I think for this one, I just want to make the text bold, right? So I'll make the text bold for the first column. I'll head down here to the grand total column. I'll format that. I'll give that a double underline, and I'll also make that bold. And maybe the fill color, I'll give it a different shade of blue here. Maybe that shade. And there we go. So we have that. And then finally, the grand total row. So as you can see, it's a lot of formatting in here. Again, I just want to keep it simple. I'll click on the Format tab for the grand total row. And for the fill color, I'll give it a simple fill here. For the font, I'll also give that double, and I'll make it bold. I'll go ahead and press OK. So this is kind of what my table is going to look like here as well. Well, I'll go ahead and press OK. And let's give it a test and let's see what that looks like. So I'll press OK. So now, how do we find that design? If I click on the More drop down here, at the very top in the Custom area, I can see that I have my custom table. Well, let's go ahead and apply that to style here. And there we go. I could make a few corrections. Maybe I want the grand total row here to kind of mimic the header row, but it doesn't look that bad, right? If we need to make any modifications to it, we can just right click on the style on the design tab. We can click on modify. This brings us right back to that box, and this gives us the capability to make any modifications that we need as well. Again, just a quick reminder, it's based on the theme and the colors that you're currently using. So if you want to, go ahead and change the theme, and then go ahead and design your own pivot table. Let's head on over to the Power Pivot Setup Worksheet tab. And Power Pivot is not turned on by default. We need to go ahead and turn it on. Once we have it turned on, we'll have an additional tab here on our ribbon that we can use. This is what it will look like. We can introduce data into the data model. We can create measures, KPIs. We can detect relationships. So we want to go ahead and turn that on. We need to get to the Excel options here. And we need to click on Customize the Ribbon on the left pane. And we simply just need to go ahead and turn on Power Pivot, the same way that we will turn on the Developer tab. I'm going to go ahead and right click on any one of my tabs here. I'll right click on the Home tab. I'll click on the Customize the Ribbon option here. And this brings me right to the area where I need to be. Here's Customize the Ribbon. Over here on the far right, here are my main tabs. I'll scroll down until I find Power Pivot. So here is Power Pivot. I'll go ahead and select it. Then I'll go ahead and press OK. Once I do that, here is my Power Pivot on my ribbon. And now I can go ahead and add my Excel tables to the data model and go ahead and create the relationships and do what I need to do to make a pivot table as well. Now, if you're not seeing the Power Pivot over here, you can go back to the Customize the ribbon, and under add-ins, you want to go ahead and search to see if the Power Pivot add-in is available. So what you want to do is click on the, down here under add-ins, it's a COM add-in. So go ahead and click on the drop down here, change it to a COM add-in, and then go ahead and press go. So COM add-in, and then press go. We'll be presented with another dialog box that will allow us to add Power Pivot to Excel for Windows. So I'll go ahead and click on go. And here we can see we have Microsoft Power Pivot for Excel. So just go ahead and press OK. And once you do that, you should have access to Power Pivot. I already have it. I'll go ahead and press cancel and I'm good to go. Go ahead and add Power Pivot and come right back. And we'll start working with our Power Pivot data. Now here we can see we're working with a data set. Now it's very common in the business world, or the data world rather, that we have our data in different places. So for example, we can see that we have a product list here. We have several products, including the actual product prices. We also have another data set here. So this is our sales rep list, and we have all of our sales reps, and we have their corresponding regions. And then finally, we have our order form. So this is the form that's kind of tracking the orders. For example, on August 31st, Christy Olson sold 2 units of the doublers. And so we want to go ahead and figure out, well, what were the total sale? So right now, we want to focus on our order form. We want to make sure that this has all the data that we need. And then we're going to go ahead and create a pivot table from this order form here as well. So it would be nice if we can add the region based on the sales rep. So we can add the region here, and we're missing the product prices. So if we can add the product prices in here as well, then we'll have the capability to basically run regional reports and get all of our prices in here as well. Finally, we need to go ahead and create another column here so that we can grab the total sale. Right? So this is going to be our sale. Well, how can we do this? There's several ways that we can do this, but let's go ahead and use Power Pivot, which in my opinion is the most efficient way to accomplish these tasks. The first thing we need to do, we need to go ahead and convert each of these lists to a table. So I'll go ahead and just press Control T. Then I'll press OK. And I want to go ahead and name these tables accordingly, because once I upload these tables into Power Pivot, when I'm writing my formulas, I'm going to be referring to the table by name. So I want to make sure I don't have any spaces, that it's just one word, and that it accurately describes the table. So right up here, I want to go ahead and call this table Table Products, or I could say TBL Products. I'll just call this Table Products. I'll go ahead and press Enter. 1 down, 2 to go. I'll go to my salesperson table here. I'll press Control T. There are the 73 records. I'll press OK. And I'll call this one Table Salesperson. There we go. And then finally for our orders, I'll go ahead and press Control T here. As you can see, we have 10,000 rows of data. I'll go ahead and press OK, and I'll call this one Table Orders. Okay. So that's it. So we have our 3 tables. Let's go ahead and click on Power Pivot. So we have each table, they're named accordingly. Let's go ahead and add each of these to the data model. So if we hover over it, it says add an Excel table from the worksheet to the data model. Let's go ahead and click on our first table. Let's click on Add to Data Model. It's going to open up Power Pivot for us and add the details of that table into Power Pivot. So here is Power Pivot. We can see it's open here. On Power Pivot, we have the Home tab, Design, and we have Advanced. I'll go back to the Home tab here. Notice on the very bottom here, our first tab is our Products table. So I'll just go ahead and minimize this. I don't want to close it. I'll just minimize it. I'll go back to my Excel. I'll click on my second table here, and I'll click on Add that to the data model. And so as you can see, we now have our Products table and our Salesperson table included in the model here. I'll go ahead and add the third table. So I'll add this to the data model. And there we go. So we have Products table, Salesperson table, and then we have our Order table here as well. Go ahead and add those to the data model and come right back. Now that we have our three tables into the Power Pivot for Excel data model, we want to go ahead and establish relationships between these three tables. Just a quick trip here. We're on the Home tab in Power Pivot, and we have a couple of command groups. As expected, we have our clipboard command group. We have the capability to get external data. So this is the benefit of one of the major benefits of Power Pivot. We can pull in data from several different sources. As long as they're related to each other, we can do that. So we can actually pull in from a SQL server or an Access database, different services that we can add here as well. We have other sources. So lots of different places that we can get data from as well. While we're in here, we can format columns just by clicking on one of these tools here. Now, unlike Excel, where you just format a particular cell, you can format an entire column with these different types of data here as well. We have sorting and filtering, and then we have calculations. But what we want to do, we want to create relationships between these three tables. Once we create relationships, we can pretty much return any field that we want to from any of those three tables. So the first thing we want to do from the Home tab, we want to go ahead and switch over to Diagram View. This will show us our three tables, and we'll be able to create the relationships and connect them together so that they can all talk to each other. So I'll click on Diagram View here. And for those of you who have used Microsoft Access, this looks pretty familiar. Here are our three tables. Here's the Products table, our two fields, Salesperson table, our two fields, and then our Orders table. So I'll just go ahead and move my Order table. This has no bearing on the data. This is just to be able to focus on this table here. So here's my Orders table. So now the question is, well, if we take a look at my Orders table and my Products table, what do they have in common? So what field do they have in common? Well, we can see that it's the products. They both have a field that's called products. So what I'm going to do to create this relationship, I'm going to go ahead and drag the products from my products table right to the products field on my orders table. Now I can go either way. I can go this way. I'll go ahead and drag it and connect it to the products here. When I do that, I can see what's called a join line. So here's my join line. My join line has a one-to-many relationship. So this is telling me that we only have one, let's say the doublers product, it only appears once on this list. But because this is our order form, this appears many times on this list. So you'll see this a lot. Mostly you'll have a one-to-many relationship. In our second example here, so what does the salesperson table have in connection with our orders table? Well, the connection here is the sales rep. Right? So we can find many instances of our sales reps on the order table, but just one unique value on our salesperson table. So I'll go ahead and drag the sales rep right to the sales rep here. And there we go. So here are our two relationships. We'll see why this is important in just a little bit, but for now, go ahead and create those relationships. When we come back, we'll see how we can use a DAX expression called related to basically borrow the region from the salesperson table and also borrow the product price from the products table. We have 3 tables and we have established the relationship between our tables and our order table. I'm going to click back on the data view. So I'll click back here. Now I can see the data for my order table. Here's my salesperson table, and here is my products table. Well, I want to focus on my order table, so I'll click here. Now what I want to do, we're missing the region. So I want to add the region based on our sales rep. So I'll go ahead and click on the first empty cell here in that blank column. And just like in Excel, we have a formula bar right here. Well, I'm going to enter what's called a DAX expression or a data analysis expression so that I can pull in the corresponding region for each of our sales rep. So I'll type equal and I'll use the related. Now this is one of the nice things about using the DAX expression. It uses common language and we get some help along the way. So I just started typing the phrase related, and as you can see related here, it returns a related value from another table. If I go down to related table, this returns the related tables filtered so that it only includes the related rows. Well, I just want related, so I'll go ahead and double click there. And for the first argument is asking me, because I created relationships between these tables, I can either pull the price from the products table, the product from the product table. Well, what I want is the region from the salesperson. So I'll go ahead and double click here. And then I'll go ahead and close my parentheses. So basically I'm using the related function. What's available? I can return the region from the salesperson table based on our current sales rep. Once I press enter, it's going to populate all the regions here based on each sales rep's region. So I'll go ahead and press enter. And there you go. So Christy Olson is from the West. Dan Peterson is from the Midwest. Mabel Lindsay is also from the West. Isabel Cross is from the East. I'll go ahead and rename the column. So I'll double click on it and I'll just call this region. Good to go. Next, I'm missing the product price. So I want to go ahead and return the price based on the product here. So I'll click on the first empty cell. On the new column, I'll click equal. And again, I'll use the related function. Now I want the price from the products table. I'll go ahead and close my parentheses and press enter. And it populates all of my prices for me. My doublers are $79.95. My sunshine product is $19.95, so forth and so on. I'll go ahead and double click on this column and I'll go ahead and call this, I'll just call this price and press enter. And I'm good to go. Now, one of the nice things with Power Pivot here and the other Power tools like Power Query, we can move these columns. So if I wanted to go ahead and move the region right next to the sales rep, I can go ahead and do that. We can't do that in Excel. We'd have to cut it, insert it, a couple of different steps there as well. For the product price, I'll move that as well over to the right after the actual product. So there we go. Sales rep, region, product, price. Now, there's one thing left to do. We're going to go ahead and enter a formula here. We want to calculate the actual sale. Now we'll keep it simple. We won't add the discount in here. We just want to go ahead and multiply the price times the units. So it's going to be the price times the units sold. And that's going to go ahead and give us our answer. So for this one, when you're writing calculations in Power Pivot, we are summarizing columns, not just cells. So when I write my formula here, it's going to go ahead and summarize all of that for me. So I'll click on the formula bar, I'll say equal, and just like in Excel, I'll click on that price. And notice how it puts in the column name for me here. And I'll click on the asterisk, and I'll click on units. Right. So let's multiply the price column times the unit column. I'll go ahead and press enter. And as expected, I now have my sale for each of my transactions here as well. I'll go ahead and double click on that column. I'll rename it to sale, and I'll go ahead and press enter. And there we go. So we were able to write 3 DAX expressions to add 3 columns to our data set. And we can see it's summarizing the columns for us. We don't have to go step by step. There's no need to autofill down, and we're good to go here as well. If I wanted to, I can go ahead and apply the currency format to the sale here, also to the price. So just some really nice cleanup opportunities that we have in here that we can use. If I click on design, we have some more options in here. We can freeze a column, right? Here's some more relationships. We can manage the relationships. If we want to break a relationship, we can do that. A lot of calculation options that we can use. There's a lot in here that we can use. But right now, mission accomplished. We have pretty much rigged up our order table so that we can go ahead and create a pivot table from here. So the final step is to go ahead and click on the pivot table command right here. This is going to insert our pivot table into our current Excel document. And now we're able to combine all 3 of those tables into one and make a cohesive pivot table where we have some nice reporting as well. So I'll go ahead and click on pivot table here. It's asking me where I want to place it. I'll place it on a new worksheet. I'll go ahead and press OK. Here's my pivot table. I'll turn on my pivot table fields. And here we go. So notice how it pulls in all of those tables for us. But I'm only concerned about the orders table. So now I can go ahead and build my pivot table here based on region, right? Based on product. And I am good to go. So a really nice way to work with our pivot table. So we've inserted our pivot table using Power Pivot. Now a natural question is, well, what if we were to add some data to our original data set? So what if I go back to my Power Pivot data here? And what if I were to change the prices here? So let's say I'm just going to go ahead and double the prices here. When I go back to my pivot table, what will I need to do? Do I need to go back into Power Pivot again and make the changes all over again? Or will all those steps that I created in Power Pivot, will it run through those steps and update my pivot table? Well, let's go ahead and take a look. Let's go ahead and record our grand total here. So right now our grand total is 915,787.50. So I'll go back to my Power Pivot data and let's just change some of the prices here. Maybe the Aspen is doubled to 42. Maybe the Quad is doubled to 68. Maybe the Sunbelt is now 50. And maybe the VRANG is now 38. Right. So I just made some updates to the original data set. I'm going to go back to my pivot table here. And let's right click on it. And let's refresh. And let's see what happens. Look at that. Everything has been updated. Because I made those changes for the product prices, we did not see it. But basically what happened was it started from the very, very beginning. It opened up Power Pivot, looked at the data model. Each table was refreshed to check to see if any data was updated. In that case, it was. And once it caught the changes that were made to my products list, it recalculated the sales in the sales column for me and provided the new information here as well. And the best thing about all of that, the original data set no matter what we do to our pivot table here, or in Power Pivot, the original data stays intact, right? But if we change it manually here, we simply just need to refresh the table. We can get some real-time results here as well. So that's another major benefit of working with the Power Platform. So go ahead and go back to the original data set. Go ahead and change some of the prices. If you want to, go ahead and even add another transaction in here, or maybe edit one of these transactions, or add a new transaction or 2 or 3, and simply go back to your pivot table, refresh it, and go ahead and locate the change. For our data mining worksheet here, well, this sheet is dedicated to just giving us some tips and tools that we can use to improve the reporting on a particular data set. So originally we had the first name and the last name in 2 separate columns. So what we did was we realized it would be better, would be more efficient if we had the rep's full name in one field here, or one header. We also had the city and the state in one column. Well, that doesn't help us much. So if we can extract the city and the state, now we have more reporting capabilities, such as being able to report based on city, also report based on state. We don't have to worry about the date. As long as they're properly formatted, we can use the timeline to get quarterly reports and so forth and so on. So to do this, we're going to be using a tool called FlashFill. And FlashFill basically looks to the left. So it looks left, and it tries to find a pattern. And once it finds the pattern, it's going to offer suggestions. So for example, I'll go ahead and click on the rep full name here. So I'll go ahead and type, maybe I'll do this. Maybe I'll say Olson, comma, space, Kara. I'll go ahead and press enter. Now let's see what happens when I start typing Anthony's last name. So TS, and look at that. So as soon as I start typing the last name, it already looked to the left. It already sensed the pattern. So in this case, the pattern, it's saying, it looks like you want the entire string value that's in column C. You want to add a comma and a space, and the full string value that is in column B. Well, this looks pretty good. I'll go ahead and press enter. I'll go ahead and expand my column here. And maybe I'm skeptical. I'll go to the bottom here, and I can see it all looks good. Annette Silva, Jerry Rivera, and I'm good to go. So FlashFill will either run automatically for you once it senses a pattern. If you want to run FlashFill manually, enter a few examples, and then click on the Data tab. And over in the Data tab in the Data Tools command group, we have FlashFill. A little lightning bolt going through a table. My favorite tool in all of Excel. I've used it in so many instances to clean up data. Let's go ahead and run FlashFill here. Let's go ahead and extract the state from column G. Well, the city, sorry. So this is Boulder. I'll go ahead and press enter. Now on the next blank cell, I'll go ahead and run FlashFill. Notice you can also run FlashFill by pressing Ctrl+E. Well, I'll go ahead and run FlashFill here. And I can see it's extracting everything to the left of the comma. Now what's really nice about FlashFill is also intuitive. Sometimes maybe it only puts bowling here instead of bowling green. Well, if I corrected this and added bowling green in here, this will kind of retrain FlashFill, and it will look for any city that has 2 names, for example, San Antonio, and it will make the correction for me. So it is intuitive. Last one, I'll go ahead and extract the state. So CO for Colorado. This time, I can either start typing Oregon, or I can press Ctrl+E to run FlashFill, or I can run FlashFill manually here as well. And we're good to go. As soon as you run FlashFill, you'll get the FlashFill options here. You can undo FlashFill if it did not find the pattern correctly, or you can accept the suggestions. You can go ahead and select all 41 of those changed cells as well. I'll just accept these suggestions, and I am good to go. If flash fill does not work right away, just keep on entering a few more examples until it finds the pattern and offers you the suggestions as well. Either way, we were able to improve this report, and now we can go ahead and get some reports based on city, state, rep's full name, and use the timeline as well. I'll go ahead and insert a quick pivot table from here. I'll use the quick analysis tool. I can either right click and right in that search menu here at the top, it's one of the newer features, I'll go ahead and type pivot table. Oh, if I can click on that box, here we go. And here we have some recommended pivot tables. We also have summarize with a pivot table. But let's see if I can find quick analysis. Here we go. Here's the analyze data. So if I click here, opens up my analyze data pane over here on the right. And now what I can do is ask questions about my data. I can also go ahead and insert one of these pivot tables. So this has sale by order, city, state, and city. What else do we have here? Sale by state. Here's a pivot chart we can insert. I'll go ahead and insert this pivot chart actually. There we go. So here's the pivot table. And we also have the pivot chart. We'll give that a dark theme. And there we go. So all set to go. Congrats on completing the course. As a recap, we were able to prepare data for pivot table analysis. We're able to insert and manage a pivot table. We're able to insert and manage a pivot chart. And then we're able to connect data sources with the popular XLOOKUP function. We're able to summarize a table with a pivot table. We're able to customize our pivot table design. We're able to use Power Pivot to connect different data sources. And then we're able to use Power Pivot to create measures with DAX Expressions as well. So congrats on completing the course. And as always, I look forward to seeing all of you in a future Learn It course.